What if everything you've been taught about love is backwards? Imagine this. You're watching your most confident friend, the one who never seems to try, and yet somehow they naturally draw people in. They're not loud. They're not fighting for attention. Still, something about them pulls others close, almost like gravity. Meanwhile, you're stuck overanalyzing every message, doubting your silence, initiating conversations, and receiving lukewarm replies. It feels unfair, doesn't it? Here's the hard truth. Most of us were raised to believe love is earned through effort, that the more available we are, the more someone will see our worth. But that mindset doesn't attract. It exhausts. It quietly drains your energy and hands your power away. What if I told you that real attraction, real respect, and real connection begin the moment you stop chasing and start embodying something ancient, something unshakable, stoic stillness? The Stoics believed that inner strength, not outward effort, builds lasting influence. And when it comes to love, nothing could be more accurate. You don't have to beg to be chosen. You just have to become the kind of person whose presence doesn't ask for attention. It commands it. That's what we're diving into today. How to flip the script and stop chasing by changing how you show up. Not for them, for yourself. If this already feels like the shift you've been waiting for, and if you're into conversations that fuse ancient wisdom with real-life power, do me one favor. Hit that subscribe button. It's free. And it tells me we're walking the same path, one built from the inside out. Let's begin. Let's get honest. Most of us were taught that love means effort, being the first to text, the one to initiate, the one who keeps the spark alive. It sounds noble, generous, but it's also exhausting. Because here's what no one says out loud. When you're always the one reaching out, you're sending a silent signal. I need this more than you do. And that signal changes the dynamic. You're no longer someone they feel lucky to connect with. You become the one who's just always there. And we don't chase what we already have. We chase what feels just out of reach. Now, don't twist this. This isn't about games or artificial distance. That's manipulation. And manipulation without depth isn't power. It's panic in disguise. The Stoics offered something deeper, self-mastery, the strength to pause, to respond with intention, not anxiety. Epictetus once said, "No person is free who is not master of themselves." So before you send that message just to feel noticed, pause, ask yourself, is this about connection, or am I just soothing my own discomfort? Real attraction doesn't bloom from constant contact. It blooms from contrast. When someone doesn't hear from you for a while, their mind begins to wander. Who are you with? What are you thinking? That space, that quiet. It becomes a vacuum that curiosity rushes in to fill. Not because you're playing hard to get, but because you've stepped out of the spotlight and let mystery step in. Carl Jung once said, people will do anything, no matter how absurd, to avoid facing their own soul. Sometimes we text constantly not out of kindness, but to avoid sitting in silence. Because silence demands presence. It demands that we face ourselves. But the moment you learn to sit in that silence, to not rush to fill every gap, you become magnetic. There's something else too. When you always initiate, you don't allow others to invest. You rob them of the opportunity to choose you. Ask yourself, how can anyone chase you if you're always running toward them? Plato once said, the first and best victory is to conquer self. And that includes the impulse to control the pace of every relationship. Try this. If you're always the one to text first, pause. Not forever, not with resentment. Just pause. 3 days, 3 days of stillness. Let the silence breathe. Observe. Who notices? Who leans in? Who meets you halfway when you stop walking the entire distance? Because here's the truth. When you stop begging to be seen, you finally see who's really looking. When you stop talking to feel heard, you discover who listens when you're quiet. And when you stop chasing, you create space for others to follow. This is not passivity. its presence. Socrates said, "To know thyself is the beginning of wisdom." And every time you resist the urge to overtext, over-explain, or overreach, you get closer to that wisdom. You become someone whose attention isn't assumed, it's earned. Most people don't realize how much they give away in the first few conversations. We overshare opinions, hobbies, stories, heartbreaks, all laid out like a resume. But when you give away everything up front, people stop reading. There's no suspense, no spark, no curiosity. And as the Stoics taught, familiarity breeds indifference. They weren't afraid of vulnerability. They just knew that depth should be revealed slowly, not dumped all at once. Epictetus said, "We have 2 ears and 1 mouth so that we may listen twice as much as we speak." That's not just good advice. It's the foundation of intrigue. When you speak less, people lean in more. They fill in the blanks with imagination, and that's what keeps them coming back. Carl Jung once wrote, "The meeting of 2 personalities is like the contact of 2 chemical substances. If there is any reaction, both are transformed." But transformation doesn't happen when everything is predictable. It happens in the unknown, in the questions left unanswered. So here's something practical. The next time someone asks what you do for fun, don't give a list. Don't bullet point your life. Say something like, "Depends on the mood. Sometimes I disappear. Sometimes I throw the best dinner party you've ever seen." That's not being vague. That's inviting curiosity. Now they're not just hearing you, they're wondering about you. Aristotle said, "The aim of art is to represent not the outward appearance of things, but their inward significance." In conversations, that means you don't have to expose everything at once. You reveal what matters, slowly, intentionally, with pacing. Vulnerability is powerful when it's earned, when it's offered like a story told in chapters, not in a single monologue. That emotional pacing, it gives people time to feel, to invest, to stay interested. Socrates once said, "The only true wisdom is in knowing you know nothing." The people who captivate us the most always leave us wanting to learn more. You don't need to pretend to be mysterious. You just need to stop over-explaining. Let the silence hold. Let the question linger. And when they ask again, that's your sign. It's working. People don't chase what's obvious. They chase what's elusive, what feels like a puzzle, like poetry. So slow down. Speak simply but with weight. Don't fill every silence. Let them ask. Let them want. That's not manipulation. That's power. And those who master it, they don't chase, they're the ones being chased. There's a dangerous belief embedded in how we view connection, that the more available you are, the more you'll be valued, that if you reply instantly, drop everything for them, answer every call, they'll admire your loyalty. But the truth, constant availability doesn't increase your value, it dissolves it. When people know they can reach you anytime, for anything, with zero resistance, they stop seeing your time as valuable. It's the law of supply and demand. What's always there becomes invisible. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "We love ourselves more than others, yet we care more about their opinion than our own." When you always drop what you're doing for someone else, you're not being generous. You're abandoning yourself. Carl Jung once said, "The privilege of a lifetime is to become who you truly are." But how can you do that? How can you even hear yourself if you're constantly on standby, ready to react? That's not connection. That's overexposure. Kindness isn't the same as availability. Boundaries are not walls. They're clarity, they're respect. When you don't reply instantly, not because you're rude, but because your energy matters, people feel the difference. They may not say it out loud, but they notice. And deep down, they respect it. Because we all value what feels rare. Aristotle said, "Knowing yourself is the beginning of all wisdom." And knowing yourself includes knowing what deserves your time. Your life shouldn't pause just because someone remembered you exist. If you want people to value your time, start by valuing it yourself. Let's get practical. This week, Try saying no, just once, not out of defiance, but to protect your peace. Let a message sit for an hour. Finish your task before replying. Choose your rhythm instead of reacting to theirs. Your presence isn't a vending machine, it's not always available. And when people realize that, they begin to treat it like gold. Plato once said, "The good life is one of order, purpose, and harmony, not chaos, not urgency, not being yanked in 10 directions by everyone else's whims. When you carry yourself with purpose, people feel it. They notice the difference, not because you're always there, but because you're always aligned. Set the tone, control the pace, show up on your terms, not on demand, because availability isn't value, but self-respect, that always is." It's strange, isn't it? When you care about someone, you want to stay close, to check in, to stay present in their mind. So you text, you respond fast, you watch their stories, you show up again and again, not because you're weak, but because you're afraid of being forgotten. But here's the paradox. The more you try to stay close, the more the connection slips, because too much presence smothers curiosity, and connection needs oxygen. Even the warmest fire dies without air. And that's exactly what constant contact takes away. The Stoics understood this on a level deeper than intellect. They practiced emotional detachment not out of coldness, but out of self-command. Epictetus once said, "He who is not satisfied with a little is satisfied with nothing." In other words, if you can't sit with a little space, a bit of silence, then no amount of closeness will ever feel secure. True connection isn't about always being present. It's about being felt even in your absence. Carl Jung spoke to this. He said loneliness doesn't come from being alone, but from the inability to express the things that matter most. And sometimes the most powerful form of communication isn't verbal, it's space. When you step back, you create room for someone to feel your absence. Not by spelling it out, but by giving them the freedom to realize what your presence truly means. Plato once taught that everything meaningful must pass through stages: formation, contrast, and transformation. That's true with relationships too. Constant texts, constant check-ins, they interrupt this process. They don't give connection the oxygen it needs to grow. If someone never wonders where you've gone, what's on your mind, or why you're suddenly quiet, they never have the chance to miss you. And this isn't about playing games. It's about restoring emotional equilibrium. When one person is always giving and the other floats in and out, the weight becomes uneven. And that doesn't feel romantic. It feels draining. The point isn't to punish anyone with silence. It's to let desire breathe again, to let longing come up for air. Socrates believed that self-awareness is the root of wisdom. Part of that awareness is noticing when your communication is grounded and when it's driven by anxiety. If you reach out just to feel less alone, if you're online simply to feel connected, that's not presence, that's pursuit. And if you're always in pursuit, you leave no room for them to move toward you. So here's the shift. Resist the urge. Not forever. Not with resentment, just long enough to let stillness speak louder than words. Let the silence communicate what you can't say. Let it build tension, let it create worth, because the people who are meant to be close, they'll feel the difference. They'll notice the pause. They'll want to step forward. That's the turning point. That's when attraction returns, not through pressure, but through space, through clarity, through self-respect. In the end, you don't need to be constantly visible to be unforgettable. You just need to stop chasing and allow. Let them feel the silence. Let it say what your words never could. There's something quietly powerful about the unexpected. Think about the most magnetic people, the ones who linger in your thoughts long after they're gone. They all have one thing in common: unpredictability. Not chaos, not inconsistency, but aliveness. They don't move in straight lines. They don't repeat the same emotional rhythm over and over, and that's exactly why we remember them. They catch us off guard. And we crave that. Our brains are wired to seek patterns, but we're also wired to get bored by them. Predictability offers comfort, sure, but too much comfort. It becomes monotony. If someone always texts at the same time, always replies the same way, always shows the same version of themselves, you stop wondering. And when curiosity dies, so does excitement. And without excitement, there's no pursuit. The Stoics understood this nuance. Yes, they advocated emotional steadiness, but never flatness. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "The universe is change. Our life is what our thoughts make it. Change is the spark that keeps things alive. To connect deeply, to stay present, to remain magnetic, you need a little movement, not noise, but nuance, not chaos, but color. Bring that energy into your interactions. Let your communication have texture." Carl Jung said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But here's the twist. Once you do accept yourself, you stop molding your behavior to fit others' comfort zones. You stop being predictable just to feel accepted. You start to reveal the full spectrum of your personality. The bold, the quiet, the silly, the soulful. You stop flattening yourself into a script and start living in full resolution. Now let's talk energy. Energy is contagious. When you're fully present, when your presence has variation, people feel it. They don't always know why, but they're drawn in because you wake something up in them. And most people, they're walking through life half asleep. Interrupt that rhythm, even slightly, and you spark something real. Aristotle once said, "Pleasure in the job puts perfection in the work." The same applies to love. When you bring playfulness, novelty, and emotion to how you show up, even the smallest moments feel fresh. It could be a text with an unexpected tone, a joke when they expected formality, a pause when they braced for reaction. Tiny shifts that stir something inside them. So here's something you can try. Break your pattern. If you always respond immediately, take your time. If you usually say, "Good night," switch it up. Say something poetic, or absurd, or nothing at all. Be warm one day, bold the next, still grounded, but dynamic. Let them feel all of you, not just the curated, predictable version. Because real attraction isn't found in perfection. It lives in unpredictability, in truth, in emotional honesty. Plato once said that love is born from a desire to seek something beyond ourselves, something meaningful, something new. But if you always act in ways others can forecast, you rob them of that discovery. And discovery, that's where emotion lives. So here's your challenge. Do one thing this week that surprises someone. It doesn't have to be huge. Call instead of text. Say something you've never said. Change your tone slightly. Share a thought you normally keep private. Let them feel the spark of unpredictability, not because you're performing, but because you're alive. You don't need to change who you are. You just need to stop hiding behind who you think you're supposed to be. Stoicism isn't about being robotic. It's about moving with conscious intention. And part of that intention is knowing when to shift your rhythm. Because when your presence carries that kind of awareness, people won't always know what to expect. And that's exactly why they'll keep coming back. There's a quiet kind of strength in saying less, especially when it comes to giving compliments. We're all told that offering praise is kind, and it can be, if it's rare, real and rooted in presence. The issue isn't that people enjoy compliments. The issue is how we give them. When compliments are handed out too freely, early often without weight, they lose meaning. What begins as warmth starts to feel like validation seeking, and that changes the dynamic. People pick up on it, not always consciously, but they sense it. When someone offers praise before it's earned, it doesn't read as generosity, it reads as neediness, like you're trying to win affection through flattery. Here's the uncomfortable truth. What is earned is respected. What is offered too easily is overlooked. Compliments aren't bad, but used carelessly, they weaken your presence and lower your perceived worth. The Stoics taught restraint not only in behavior but in speech. Marcus Aurelius said, "Waste no more time arguing what a good person should be. Be one. Don't flood someone with compliments hoping to be liked. Be someone who observes, who notices subtleties, who speaks with purpose. And when you do speak, people will listen. Not because your words are louder, but because they're rare." Carl Jung echoed this. You are what you do, not what you say you'll do. The same applies to connection. It's not about how many flattering things you say. It's about how grounded you are when you say them. Are your compliments automatic, or are they specific? Earned? Felt? One honest, well-placed compliment rooted in genuine presence will echo far longer than a stream of casual affirmations. Here's where things get interesting. In a world where praise is cheap and overused, silence becomes a signal. When someone is used to hearing compliments constantly and you don't jump in with one, it stands out. It creates tension, a little mystery. They start to wonder, why haven't they said anything? That pause, that space, it's magnetic. It becomes emotional contrast, and people remember contrast. Socrates believed wisdom begins in recognizing how little we know. That wisdom applies here too. When you observe more than you speak, when you don't rush to praise, you show discernment. You show that your approval has weight, that it's not for everyone. This isn't about withholding affection or being emotionally distant. Not at all. It's about intention. Let your compliments land. Let them come from awareness, not habit. Say them simply, clearly, without exaggeration. One thoughtful comment, not about appearance but about presence, character or depth, can shift everything. Plato once said, "Wise men speak because they have something to say, fools because they have to say something." Compliments are no different. The ones that come from truth, from stillness, from observation, those are the ones people replay in their minds for days. So here's your challenge. The next time you're about to send that "you're so cute" message, pause. Pay attention instead. Let them feel your attention before they hear it. Then, when it truly matters, say something with impact. That's the kind of compliment people crave, not because it flatters their ego, but because it felt real. And real is rare. Some of the most powerful moments in life happen not in loud declarations, but in silence. In that still space between words where meaning finds its way in. It's in those quiet gaps that something deep settles, not because you said more, but because you allowed room for tension. But here's the catch. Most people can't handle silence. It makes them uncomfortable. So they rush. They overtalk. They reply too quickly, not from confidence but to escape the discomfort. But discomfort isn't always the enemy. Often it's the doorway to something meaningful. The Stoics knew this. They practiced restraint, not just in reaction but in expression. Epictetus said, "It's not what happens to you but how you respond to it that matters." That includes silence. When someone stops talking, or when a conversation slows down, do you panic? Or do you relax, breathe, and let the moment unfold? Carl Jung understood it well. "Solitude is for me a well of healing," he wrote. "Silence, both inner and outer, brings clarity, and clarity leads to deeper connection. When you resist the need to speak just to keep a moment alive, you communicate something far stronger. I'm at ease with myself. And that calm, that self-containment speaks louder than clever lines ever could. Socrates, the father of deep questioning, believed wisdom begins in wonder, and wonder doesn't bloom in noise, it blooms in pause. In the spaces left open, in the moments when a question lingers just a little longer than expected. That breath, that stillness, it invites reflection. And reflection is where real connection begins. Let's talk rhythm. In music, it's not just the notes that move us, it's the silence between them that gives shape to the melody. Conversation works the same way. If you're always talking, always explaining, always jumping to respond, you rob the other person of the space to absorb your words. But when you pause, even briefly, something shifts. They lean in, they wonder, and that leaning in, that's attraction. Aristotle once said, "The more you know, the more you realize you don't know." Sometimes, the most powerful move you can make is to say nothing. Let your presence carry the message. Let your calm hold the room. You don't need to explain yourself constantly. You don't need to chase clarity through over-communication. If someone is truly curious, they'll come closer, and if they're not, no amount of effort will change that. Silence isn't emptiness. It's an invitation, a mystery. The space where emotional gravity is created. And in a world addicted to immediacy, the person who can pause, the one who can wait, stands out. Stillness becomes a beacon, a magnetic pulse, not because you're trying, but because you're centered. So next time you're in a conversation, resist the impulse. Let silence breathe. Let a message sit before you answer. Let a question echo before you reply. Let your presence speak without filling the air. Because when you master the pause, you don't just talk, you resonate. There's an unspoken energy that people feel instantly, not the surface-level type, but the deeper, quieter one. The one that says, "I know who I am." And the most magnetic kind of energy? It doesn't chase, it doesn't beg, it doesn't perform. It chooses, with calm, with confidence, with clarity, not from ego, but from self-respect. You don't have to tell people you have options. The ones who truly do, don't talk about it. They move with quiet authority. Their words carry weight because they're not trying to persuade. Their presence holds value because they're not desperate to be seen. That alone, that silent confidence, makes people want to be chosen by them. This is what the Stoics meant by self-sufficiency. Seneca wrote, "He who is content is rich." When you feel whole within yourself, no one can control you through attention or affection. You're not begging for love. You're choosing who deserves access to your peace. That's real power. And people feel it, even if they can't explain why. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." And it's true, because once you do, you stop needing others to validate your worth. You stop shrinking, you stop editing your words, your essence, your truth, just to earn a reaction. You no longer need to be chosen because you've already chosen yourself. Think about this practically. Ever notice how your tone changes when you're not emotionally attached to the outcome? When you're not seeking someone's approval? You're calmer. You're more playful. You speak naturally. That version of you, the grounded one, is who people chase. Because it feels genuine, it feels free. But when you treat one person like your only chance at connection, when you move from scarcity, it shows. You overdo it. You flatter too much. You hide your real opinions. You laugh at things that aren't funny. And slowly you drift out of alignment with your truth. And the other person, they can sense it. Not through words, but through energy. Through subtle shifts in tone and posture. Plato once said, "The measure of a man is what he does with power." And emotional power, the power to pause, to choose, to walk away, is among the most valuable traits you can build. When you speak like someone who has options, not from bluff, but from inner freedom, it changes how people hear you. It changes how they see you. So next time you're around someone you're drawn to, ask yourself, am I being real or am I performing? If your tone feels tense, if your words feel rehearsed, pause, breathe, come back to yourself. You don't have to prove your value. The right people, they'll see it on their own. Socrates once said, to find yourself, think for yourself. So stop contorting who you are just to fit into someone else's script. Write your own. Make choices that stem from your values, not from the fear of being alone. Because when your presence comes from inner peace instead of pressure, people feel that. They feel safe. They feel drawn in. And in that space, you stop needing to chase. They start coming to you. Not because you said you had options, but because you moved through the world like someone who already knew that. There's a subtle shift that happens, almost invisible, when confidence turns into pursuit. It's not loud. It sneaks in quietly, saying yes when you mean no, forcing a laugh at a bad joke, waiting for hours on a text that doesn't come, giving more than you get, and calling it loyalty. And if you're not careful, this becomes your rhythm. You stop leading your life and start clapping for someone else's. You become the audience in their story, instead of standing in the spotlight of your own. Let's be real. You are not a footnote. You're not here to beg for scraps of affection or prove your worth to someone who doesn't recognize it. And yet, so many of us do exactly that. We pedestal others, treat their attention like a trophy, tie our self-worth to their reactions, and in the process we stop living, we start performing, hoping to be liked instead of simply being ourselves. This is exactly what the Stoics warned us about. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "Tranquility comes when you stop caring what they say or do and focus only on your own actions." That's true confidence, quiet, unafraid. It doesn't need approval. It doesn't put others on pedestals. It walks with spine and softness, power and calm. Aristotle described virtue as the balance between extremes, not too much, not too little, and in love, balance is everything. Yes, give. Yes, care. But if you're constantly the one giving while the other only takes, that's not kindness. That's imbalance dressed as affection. And people don't value what's handed over too quickly. They value what's earned, not because you're playing games, but because effort breeds meaning. So here's the shift. You are the prize, not because you're perfect, not because of your looks or clever words or follower count, but because you know your value. And you're not afraid to walk alone when it's not reciprocated. That calm self-assurance, it's magnetic. People chase it. They lean into it. Because deep down, everyone is searching for the person who doesn't need them, but chooses them anyway. That kind of choice, it's rare. Socrates also said, "Know thyself." And knowing yourself means asking hard questions. Am I overgiving because I want to, or because I'm afraid to lose them? Am I showing up grounded or hoping they'll make me feel worthy today? These aren't easy reflections, but they matter. They strip away illusion and bring you back to your center. So here's something tangible. Next time you feel that urge to overtext, over-explain, or overextend, pause. Ask yourself, am I acting like the prize right now? If the answer is no, that's your signal. Breathe, reset, reclaim. Move from self-respect, not scarcity. Because when you start showing up like someone who values their peace, people notice. You don't need to speak it. Your energy says it all. And the ones meant for you, they'll match it. So stop applauding for people who wouldn't clap for you. You're not the audience. You're the entire show. And it's time to act like it. There's a moment. A tone change, a delay in reply, a cold edge. You feel it in your gut before your brain catches up. Something's off. And what's your first instinct? Reach out. Fix it. Prove you're worth staying for. You want to explain. You want to hold on. But what if you let go? First, not from bitterness, not to manipulate, but from a place of quiet self-awareness, from the kind of stillness that says, my worth is not up for negotiation. The Stoics were masters of this restraint. Epictetus said, freedom is the only worthy goal in life, and it's achieved by letting go of what lies outside our control. You can't control someone's interest. You can't force a bond, but you can control how you carry yourself. You can leave with your peace intact, and that is self-respect at its highest form. Jung echoed this when he wrote, I am not what happened to me. I am what I choose to become. You are not their silence. You are not the unread messages. You are not the shrinking version of yourself you keep offering for acceptance. You are your boundaries, your choices, your decision to leave the room when your presence is no longer honored. Plato believed love is the pursuit of wholeness, a recognition of something noble in another. But if that love feels one-sided, if you're pouring while they withhold, it's not love, it's imbalance. And the longer you stay in that space, the more you teach your nervous system to survive rather than connect. You teach your soul to settle for crumbs, and what you tolerate, you train yourself to expect. Leaving first isn't dramatic. It doesn't require fireworks. It requires truth, a subtle pulling back of energy. No chasing, no performing, no waiting to be chosen. You choose yourself. Socrates said the unexamined life is not worth living, and that includes your emotional patterns. Are you staying where your dignity is chipped away? Are you making yourself smaller to be accepted? Are you explaining your value to someone who's already decided not to see it? Ask, reflect, then act. When you leave from a place of peace, not pride, something powerful happens. You're not running, you're not escaping, you're honoring the shift. And that quiet exit, it lingers. Because most people expect you to chase, to beg, to hold on. But when you don't, when you choose serenity over struggle, that silence carries more weight than 1,000 words. Aristotle believed that true happiness comes from virtue, from living aligned with your values. And that means walking away when staying would cost your soul. So if the energy's off, trust that. Don't type another paragraph trying to salvage what's already sinking. Don't reach for a heart that stopped reaching for you. Pull your energy back, softly, confidently, fully. Because the person who exits with grace, they don't just protect their dignity, they become unforgettable. And that silence, that stillness, it says everything. Let's get honest. There's something unmistakable about someone who doesn't need the room to validate them. They're not performing, they're not chasing approval, they're grounded. And without saying a word, people lean in. You can't fake that energy. It only comes from the inner work, from facing your shadows, from making peace with yourself. It's not loud, it's not boastful. It simply says, I'm complete, with or without your attention. This energy doesn't beg, doesn't shrink, doesn't adjust to make others more comfortable. It stands, it holds eye contact. It speaks only when there's truth to share. Maybe you've seen it, maybe you've been it, that rare self-possession, that presence that doesn't need a stage, because it is the stage. The truth? Most people chase love not from fullness, but from lack. They crave validation, attention, a sense of being enough, not because they're broken, but because no one ever taught them how to be whole. So they search outside themselves for what only inner work can give. But here's the paradox. The more you crave to be wanted, the less attractive you become. The more grounded you are, the more people want to be near you. That's the essence of Stoic ataraxia, a deep inner stillness, not numbness, not apathy, but a steady soul. Calm, even as the room shifts. Marcus Aurelius wrote, "He who lives in harmony with himself lives in harmony with the universe." When your inner world is aligned, your outer world starts to reflect it. You stop chasing validation. You stop begging for attention. You stop proving. You start choosing. Carl Jung once said, "The most terrifying thing is to accept oneself completely." But when you do, you stop looking for someone to fill your cracks. You become whole. And from that wholeness, love becomes a bonus, not a need. Plato believed balance comes when we quiet the ego and listen to something deeper. When we stop trying to be chosen and start asking ourselves, what am I choosing? That clarity changes everything. The way you move, the way you speak, the way you allow others in. Think of your life as a home. If it's empty, anyone can walk in and feel important. But if it's already full, with peace, purpose, joy, then anyone who enters must bring value, not to complete you, but to join you. That's what healthy love looks like, not two halves trying to make a whole, but two whole people building something greater. Socrates once said, "The greatest way to live with honor is to be what we pretend to be." And in a world of facades, those who are truly whole don't announce their value, they embody it. So here's the quiet truth no one tells you. When you become the one who doesn't need to be chosen to feel worthy, you become unforgettable. You're the one people remember, the one who walks in peace, who speaks with depth, who gives without losing themselves. Build your life like it's already enough. Fill it with what feeds your soul. Be the one who brings value to themselves first. Because when you do that, you stop waiting to be rescued and start attracting those who simply want to run beside you. And that's when everything shifts. Not because you were chasing them, but because you finally stop chasing anything. True power begins when you stop chasing and start becoming. When you walk rooted in your own worth, you don't just attract attention, you command respect. If this message stirred something in you, there's another video on your screen right now. Click it. Go deeper. Keep growing. Thank you for being here. Your presence matters more than you know. Until next time, stay calm, stay clear, and keep becoming someone even silence can't ignore.